Welcome. This will be my video on Avatar 3 Fire and Ash from this year, 2025. I'm going to start with a review that's only going to spoil the first two, not this one, and then I will get into spoilers for this one, but I'll verbally let you know before I do so. And yeah, it's difficult to talk very much about this one without spoiling the first two, so I guess I will very briefly note, if you are watching this video and you haven't watched the first two and you don't know spoilers, you don't want spoilers for the first two, if you end up watching the first two and you like the second one, there's a decent chance you're going to like this one as well. I do feel like it might be, I can imagine in the future some people might skip at least some of these, especially if there really are going to end up being 5 of them. I think this is a pretty safe bet to skip, or possibly the second one. The second and third are very, very similar, to the detriment of especially this one. I felt more while watching the second one, in part because the stuff was, the first time I was seeing it, an Avatar movie anyway, hardly ever, and this one felt too much like the same. So from here on out, with that said, from here on out there will be spoilers for the first two movies. So the movie is rated PG-13. So will this video be? I am becoming exponentially less interested in Avatar the longer this goes. I'm going to highlight the things that I did think worked here, and I'm going to do my best to make a review where, if the movie is something you might end up liking, the review is going to let you know that. You might have different priorities than me. That's fine. That doesn't mean that I'm better. And I suppose that does pretty much, yeah. I watched this in 3D, not IMAX. I think it might have been HFR, or high frame rate for the uninitiated. It looked like it to me, and I read somewhere, but then I read somewhere else that it might not be. You know, it's difficult to find the truth on the internet at this point, thanks to powerful fascists and, you know, tech billionaires. Oh, I guess those are the same thing, huh? It's how I remember HFR looking, but it has been like 10 years. I think I'm pretty sure the only other time I've watched HFR, sadly, is the Hobbit trilogy, and I'm pretty sure that was a decade ago that ended. You know, that was 2013, 14, and 15. I don't know why not more. Well, I do. I just wish it weren't the case. I'm glad that, that is one thing I continue to really respect James Cameron for. He does try to do things technologically that we haven't really either seen before or we don't see enough. You know, he didn't invent 3D. He brought it back. He made it look significantly better than it ever had before. And yeah, if you have a choice, I would recommend the HFR, but it's obviously, HFR is not for everyone. For me personally, it's about 30 minutes before one's eyes adjust. I have heard for some people it's longer. I forget if there are people out there for whom it just never works. I'm afraid you'll have to look elsewhere. My wrists are too sore to check right now, but I wouldn't rule it out. It is very, yeah, it's not quite the same as we're used to. And yeah, this and Hobbit are some of the places where HFR and 3D especially make sense. You know, there are movies that I love that I don't think, would necessarily benefit from it. Maybe I reference it too frequently, but it remains one of my favorite movies. The 2003 movie Monster, directed by Patty Jenkins, starring Charlize Theron. You know, the movie about the female serial killer. See, I can never remember her first name properly. They call her Lee throughout the movie, and that's not quite her real first name. But yeah, I've given enough information that you can find the movie that I'm talking about. Love that movie. Don't need to see it in 3D or HFR. Not saying every movie needs it, but for movies like this, yeah, the spectacle is absolutely still, from a technical standpoint, impressive. I was not as emotionally engaged as I was with first two, and usually am with Cameron's movies, but it still looks great. Every other movie is, when it comes to 3D in movies, there's Avatar, and then there's everything else. I'm not sure I've seen anything else that looks quite as good in 3D as Avatar. And that, yeah, I hope somebody else picks up the mantle. I just hope they're better at other aspects of storytelling as well. I think right, I guess, okay, sure. Hypothetically, maybe this is the first video you've watched that talks about the 3D in Avatar, sure. It feels like you could reach out and touch it. It doesn't constantly throw stuff directly at the screen the way that, the kind of gimmicky 3D that we thankfully are, when a movie like that comes out, there's a lot of people warning about it's really gimmicky. And I appreciate sometimes it can be fun. But I do think, ideally, when a movie is 3D, it should be immersive like this. So, the script. Okay. I don't know exactly who to blame here, so I'm not going to name names, because James Cameron decided, in all his mighty ego, to split up the movies in this weird way that we're not really used to for the screenwriting purposes. I mean, for movies, like, I feel like I've heard of some shows doing it, but I am not really sure I've seen other movies do it, and I sort of get his philosophy behind it, but I also don't know that it's, I don't know if that's why the scripts for the two sequels we've gotten so far have struggled so much. It's possible it's other stuff. I will briefly acknowledge, and I think, let's see, was it... See, I've watched several videos recently on Avatar, not all of them on this one. I guess I'll just briefly note, yeah, I liked Tyler Calvert's review, Mark and the Movies, I think is his channel name. Sorry. It's my memory, no disrespect. Pretty big fan. Very, very fond of, especially like the, I guess they are video essays, aren't they? I do watch the reviews of when it's a movie that I'm interested in, but really, really big on the video essays that criticize the anti-woke YouTube chuds. Anyway, yes, I believe it was the Book and Movie Guy who did a video on, among other things, Avatar, and I believe it's called When You Confuse Cultural Impact for Brand Identity. I think it was him who pointed out that one of the big things with Avatar is that James Cameron doesn't really change his mind late in the game, so the effects get proper time dedicated to making them look like they are immaculate. I am willing to acknowledge there have been times in his storied career where he did put an effect in a movie that he should have been honest doesn't quite hold up, and it pains me to say, but one of them is in The Terminator, which, love that movie, but hasn't been the case with the Avatar movies, since he started making Avatar movies, and I do hope at some point he intends to stop. Since he did, he has been completely on point. And it was really always quite rare for there to be effects that just don't quite hold up scrutiny in his movies. But now it's gone, McCready. Now, the setup here is way too similar to the second movie. I don't know if he has watched too much Disney and was like, hey, they're doing live action remakes of their animated movies. Why don't I remake my own movie that's only 3 years old? But at the same time, okay, so this is a movie that has too much and too little going on. There's too much to the point where it's difficult to connect with enough of it that none of it feels like a slog. This is a movie, and I really hate to say it, but it did not take long for it to start feeling like a chore. And I like the me in the past that just watched The Terminator for the first time wants to develop time travel to come and kick my ass for saying that, but about any James Cameron movie. But yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to watch the next two, at least as long as Cameron's directing them. I hope that once he's done the next two, that he's just going to be like, done, and either move on to something else or maybe start mentoring. Is that what... There was a while, I forget if maybe he started back up again, but there was a while where Robert Rodriguez did not direct very many of his own movies anymore, even though he hadn't been making the movies for all that long. And as far as I could tell, he was like trying to encourage more people. Sam Raimi took a break. I'm really glad he's back. Can hardly wait. I am so there for Send Help. But yeah. There's... Okay, I'll finish this thought and then I'll get back to my other point. I am rewatching, I guess, every single Sam Raimi movie that I have on DVD. And I guess it is like 8 total, maybe? 7 or 8, thereabouts. I guess it slightly depends on how you count, but okay, I guess not all of them, but a bunch of them for Send Help. I did the same for James Cameron movies for Avatar 2. For this one, I only rewatched the first 2 Avatar movies. And I didn't even realize it until a few days ago. Like, I used to eagerly rewatch, especially, like, when he's good, he's one of my favorite directors. When he's on point, he might be my favorite director. The Terminator remains one of my favorite movies of all time. It has for 25 years or so, ever since I first watched it, and several of his other movies I think are just absolutely amazing. But he's wearing me down, man. Okay, we're gonna move on. So my other point was, so as mentioned, it has too much going on. It also has too little. There's barely any new, I was saying that about the second one. You can go back 3 years ago. I did a video on the second one. I was talking about how there's too much retread of the first, and I worried, I believe I also said in my, the second one, there's not enough resolution. I never thought in a million years that I would ever be saying it about James Cameron. But I'm sorry, it feels like he's motivated by the profit. It feels like he is not that invested in making us care anymore, in having us experience something that's like powerful, that changes you. I never would have thought that he would, like, oh, okay, obviously, yes, he has always made movies that clearly had elements that were intended to appeal to a broad enough audience that the movie would make a lot of money, but it didn't used to feel calculated. I think Avatar 2 might be the first time that it really started to feel like Avatar 1 has a lot of problems, but it feels like it's what he wanted to make. And then these two just feel like he's just thinking about like I didn't read the I didn't read the article, and I'm not judging, maybe it was just like, I know they try to get like a quote, but apparently, according to an article headline, apparently James Cameron's response when like a studio person or something was like, I don't know about all these Avatar sequels, which like, yeah, give that guy a raise. Yeah, I'm joking, obviously. Studios are doing a lot wrong. But apparently James Cameron's response was, what part of another chance to make $2 billion, something or other. That's where the headline cut off in the thumbnail bit. But yeah, I really hope I'm wrong. I cannot put into words how relieved I will be if, when the fourth movie inevitably comes out, if I say that I understand it now. But as it is right now, like, I do think a movie should be able to stand on its own. There are movies out there that don't tell the full story, that still feel like you went through something. Infinity War, I'm not saying the movie's perfect. I knew going into it that it was going to be like part one. Like, originally it was called Infinity War Part 1. At the end of it, I had gone through something. And I'm not saying it was like deep, but I felt feelings other than boredom and some excitement. I will say, yeah, there is for sure some excitement here. It is very frustrating to me how much of this movie is doing things from the second movie, which was already doing too much of what the first movie did, and just like I've seen others already point out, it's treading beautifully rendered water. We're not getting anywhere. Like, why do we need 5 movies if 2 of 3 are this repetitive? And the first one wasn't that original to begin with. That was the joke back then. Like, remember 2009 when everyone was like, well, okay, so it's, Pocahontas dances with wolves in Fern Gully, but they're blue and cat people? Like, okay, so what? And he just doubled down. He didn't do any... There are things in this movie that are just retreads of the first two. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's the same. It's reminding me a little of the Venom sequels. Like, they don't understand what made the first one so popular, and who can blame them? It's very hard to deduce. And so they just try stuff and like sort of do similar things and now it doesn't feel as fresh. I really hope the MCU gets Venom at some point. I'm sure they're going to do a better job than Sony. Anyway, I guess that pretty much covers that aspect. The psychological accuracy, there's definitely some good stuff there. There's other stuff that's weirdly, like, when did his movies get to be so bigoted? Like, outside of True Lies, which I will talk more about. Not for forever. Don't worry. I got nearly everything I wanted to say about that movie in my actual video about that, which I'm sure for people who love that movie, my video on it is interminable. Anyway, I swear I'm trying to not be the annoying, bring down bummer dude, but this movie is testing me. Okay, I can't detail too much of the bigotry because some of it is spoilers, so I'll go into it in the spoiler section. But yeah, I don't. That's part of why I'm saying I hope he mentors, because he doesn't seem to be willing to keep up. You know, like, I'm not used to leftist filmmakers making such regressive movies these days. Like, this is the kind of stuff, and some of it is even worse, that I would expect from, like, yeah, 80s and such, you know. And to be clear, I love a lot of movies from the 80s, but yeah, like, it just feels so out of step with a lot of, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. It reminded me a little of some of the worst of the MCU, which, you know, I love nearly everything MCU. If you want to call me a shill, I don't think it's accurate, but, you know, go ahead. But yeah, like, Secret Invasion and one particular element, though they kind of downplay it, of the, well, okay, more than one element. Anyway, of Captain America 4. I hate to be saying that about the first Captain America movie to have an African-American Captain America, and such a talented actor too. It's so frustrating. Like, it's there. Just do a better job of it. Like, the centrism of that movie is deeply frustrating. This is absolutely not what we need right now. But, like, other recent, recent superhero movies tend to be more progressive than this, and in most ways better. Like, CG is sometimes not, like, 100% perfect in those, and obviously it's better here. I already mentioned that. But other than that, just, I don't think that it's automatically a good thing that James Cameron doesn't change his mind. And to be clear, I'm not saying that, like, the book and movie guy, I'm not saying he was saying that it's purely a good thing. He was pointing out that it means the effects aren't redone over and over. And sometimes, you know, studio people will come up with an idea last minute and tell the CG people to work on it, and then some people will end up blaming the CG people who did their best with the time they were given. It's, when there are problems in the world, and there are a number, look at the top people. Don't blame, you know, middle and low level power people for it. I forget who said it, but someone pointed out, you know, conservatives are focused on the wrong 1%. You know, talking about trans people when it's, you know, the 1%, as in the opposite of the 99%. It's the wealthiest people who are the cause of all of these problems, and who so easily could solve it if they could just get over their ego and lay off the worshipping of fascist. I'm gonna move on. Yeah, like the first two movies, this is very true to the world that it creates, and it is immaculately realized, you know? It feels like, I mean, yeah, let's see. I forgot. That has been confirmed. Yes, James Cameron wrote a, like, incredibly detailed, you know, like, many, many pages of stuff about the world of Pandora of these movies, you know, apparently including, like, the screw used in some building or something like that, you know. And that shows, like, yeah, at its best, it feels like we're in this world. At its worst, it feels like someone just really wanted to ramble forever about something they found fascinating, and they realized that it would put people to sleep if they did it with words, so they incorporated pictures and characters as well, you know. And yeah, the level of detail is through the roof. It's genuinely... I think there are probably young people watching these movies. Like if you're still a child, if you're young enough that you know you still have a lot of imagination in a way that too many adults, you know, leave it behind. I try to maintain mine. I think it's extremely healthy to let's see. It's Savvy Writes Books. I don't know if she came up with it, but she points out we should be playing as adults as well. But the yeah, if you're a child watching one of these Avatar movies, I think there's some chance that you're gonna walk away thinking Pandora's real. They just went to a place and filmed this stuff for real, you know, and that's wonderful. I really, really want more like that in movies. I, again, just think you can separate it from the bad of this movie. And yeah, so tonally, this so badly wants to be this franchise's Empire Strikes Back. And I'm not saying it's Rise of Skywalker instead, but it's closer to that. There is way too much of this movie, which is way too long. I know I'm not the first person to say it, but yes, let's see, 3 hours and 17 minutes or something. It's ridiculous. This movie, there's way too much of it. That is people expressing in one way or another. Everything is hopeless. And it's just like, okay, if that's going to be the big theme, for one thing, it really clashes with some of the lighter stuff. Like there's also times where people are like smiling and saying, oh, it's time for the thing. And it's like tonal whiplash. The movie is twice as long as it should be. I think the dark tone could work if it was much, much shorter. Because some of my favorite movies are, you know, significantly shorter than this, incredibly dark. The Thing 1982, The Fly, I want to say 1986, certainly the 1980s, sometime in the 1980s is when that came out. Videodrome, like you can do a... Yeah, I've made my point. I'm moving on. Let's see. I think the yeah, the dialogue. There's just so much. Like, can someone please find a way to make James Cameron understand no one needs to hear the word bro said this many times? It's just like, it feels like he's still in the 1980s. This is how teenagers used to be written back then. And when you look at, like, there's so much more. You can write much more complex teenage characters today, you know? I don't know how much time I want to devote to examples, but like off the top of my head, Crush, the one about a sapphic teenage girl who is really in love with a popular girl who doesn't really notice her, and Plan B. I want to say that one's from 2021. You know, a young woman has to find a Plan B pill and goes on a road trip with her best friend. Yeah, I think I'm okay. I guess very, very shortly. So yeah, so not movies, but the various MCU adjacent shows tend to do like Cloak and Dagger. Um, honestly, Ms. Marvel, even though that one definitely has a little bit too much going on, but there is so much that like I know, I can tell James Cameron wants us to care about these teenage characters, but I don't know. I've never been entirely sure if he likes teenagers because I'm not sure. Has he ever written one that wasn't at least fairly irritating? Like I think he might be one of those filmmakers who thinks that that's what teenagers want to see. And I don't know. I mean, I was not a teenager in the 1980s. Maybe back then that was popular. Okay, you know what? Considering the tremendous popularity of the Friday the 13th movies, yeah, I guess there are a bunch of young people who really want to see teenagers. That I will definitely acknowledge. They are significantly more obnoxious in those movies than in most of James Cameron's movies. Honestly, in this one and the second one, it does start to get really close. Right, and for those who don't know, I consider every Friday the 13th movie enjoyable enough. It's junk food. You know, I can sit down and watch any one of them and enjoy myself fairly decently. I just think it's too bad that slashers so often do not reach the potential, you know, because 1978's Halloween, honestly, I think a case could be made for the H40 trilogy, the new 3 Halloween movies. Um, I mean, and on this very channel, I've talked about the several um, Greenlandic slashers, you know, two Greenlandic slashers. I do not remember the titles, but the writer-director is Malik Kleist. So you can look him up on IMDb, find the titles. If you want my thoughts on those particular movies, I did a video on each, at least one video on each. I forget if there's more than one on at least one of them. Anyway, I really, really wish, and I don't know if it might already be too late. How far along are they on 4 and 5? There's already retconning going on in this and the second movie, so I don't see why. Like I'm worried that his stubbornness is gonna keep it from happening. But I really would love to see better writing for the teenage characters. It's just right now, clearly we are meant to care about them, but it feels like he's saying, yeah, teenagers are such a pain in the ass. Like, oh my God, can you believe it? But we gotta live with them. They're the future. And it just feels insulting. Like, these movies are PG-13. Like, clearly he's trying to attract a teenage audience. And a lot of stuff in these movies work for teenagers, obviously. But it's just, it feels like he's doing it under duress, you know? I guess that pretty much covers the script. So moving on to the direction. So I'm willing to admit James Cameron has always had elements of melodrama and theme park ride. Yeah, I guess in all of his movies, really. But it didn't take over until, I mean, really it is this one, I think. Even the second Avatar movie does not completely get lost in that kind of, but yeah. There's still just too much, because he has so many things he wants to fit in here. Like, I don't know who. I hope that person does not have ability to further influence Cameron, but somebody apparently convinced Cameron that this movie needed to be so freaking similar to the second one. So there's not enough breathing room for the new stuff. The movie ends up overlong, And yeah, like there's just, it's a movie that I found myself slipping in and out of interest with. Like when a new element presented itself, I was typically engaged. I didn't always love it, but I at least felt something. But there's just way too much of it. Just, I want to give some praise to the fact that, so obviously, you know, with almost 6 frickin' hours of story before, well, not all of its story, before this movie, obviously this one needs, and the last one came out 3 years ago, it's necessary to remind people, hey, what happened? I greatly appreciate that the very first thing we see is how Loak feels about, I'm probably going to butcher his name, Nekatam, the brother that died near the end of the second movie. Because obviously it's important to remind people, and you know, if you're walking into this one, God help you, without having watched the first two, yeah, it's important to have that in there. It's not just like exposition. You know, that's, I've already said that, but the first movie has way too much. I don't know why he still feels the need to have voiceover exposition. Somebody, please, please convince him to drop it, because at this point, it feels like he just doesn't know how else. Like at times it's just restating something that was said earlier, and it's like, do you think maybe there's too much time between the time it was first said and now that you're having something happen that's related to it? If you feel the need to have the exact line, and some of the time it's not even, it wasn't originally, oh right, yeah, it's not a spoiler to say, at least some of the narration, I'm not giving away if it's all of it, at least some of the narration in this is Loak. Some of, on at least one occasion, someone says a thing and then later Loak just restates that thing, and it doesn't have the same impact. And I don't know why they didn't just play, like they could add like an echo. That would have been more effective. Like, again, it feels like he's stuck in the 1980s. This is the kind of thing that, I'm not saying every movie in the 1980s, but there were movies back then that just didn't quite, it's kind of like, you know how, so I didn't experience this myself. And that is something I am deeply grateful for. But apparently, right after gelatin was introduced into food, some people working in the industry would just gelatinize frickin' everything because they had no idea what they were doing. So they would just try it with everything. And from what I've read, gelatin works with fairly little food, and yet they had, you know, but that's American food, quote unquote, culture, white people's quote unquote food culture in America, you know, just like, I don't know, if it grabs a headline, it's good. Who cares if it's actually quality? But okay, I guess I'll just briefly acknowledge, yeah, I'm not saying that we white Danes have fantastic food culture either, but I do appreciate that we tend to steer clear of excess. But yeah, I mean, if you want really good food, it tends to not be originally made by white people. You have to go with some, you know, ethnic minority, which might be part of why white supremacists are so angry. They know deep down they don't have that much to contribute. They keep talking about like how we built. Did you build it, or did some of your ancestor maybe? And a lot of the time they point to stuff that's like, no, that was an ethnic or gender or, you know, minority or LGBTQ plus individual or something. It wasn't cishet white men who did all this stuff. But, you know, if you don't feel like you have very much to contribute to the world, you're gonna stolen value your way through it. And sadly, a lot of people choose to be bigoted. Bigotry is a choice. I'm willing to acknowledge that there are factors that can help lead to it. but I went through a lot of those factors. I've worked very hard to not be bigoted. It's a choice. If I can do it, if all I'm saying is, if you think that I'm not very impressive and yet I can do it, surely you can do it as well. Goes both ways. Door swings both ways. My ass. And what? I rewatched Predator 2. The new amazing, Predator Badlands, much better movie than this. If I could time travel, I would go and watch that movie a second time and skip this one. Anyway, obviously I'm not saying that movie is super deep, but it's more relevant, more well considered as far as like, oh my god, this movie is so freaking problematic in ways that I'm going to get into in the spoiler section. Moving on. Okay, I think I've pretty much said what I had about that. Yeah. Maybe I'm overusing the time travel metaphor for this video, but hypothetically, if someone had access to a time machine and they went back and they convinced James Cameron, instead of making 5 billion Avatar movies, just do like miniseries or something, like some episodes of a TV show, and let stuff breathe. I am, right now I'm in the process of watching Arrow Season 2, and the storytelling there is so much more fluid, dynamic, and doesn't feel the need to cram everything in because they have enough episodes. I think Avatar would have been so much better if it was like, I don't know if there's like a 22 season episode, but these days you can make a TV show that's like 10 episodes. I mean, these 3 movies, 10 episodes, the roughly, not 100% an hour each. Yeah. So hypothetically, if you did, yeah, I think if you made the first 2 movies into a 10 episode miniseries, and then these other sequels could be following seasons or something, because like he himself, listen, he is bringing these comparisons upon himself, because he talked about like, oh yeah, I made a 3-hour movie because people are okay with streaming. Yeah, because you can pause. Like, do you not understand that other people can't just dedicate however much time and like, I really wish he wouldn't ask us for this much time in a row if he's going to say this little with it. The stuff that's really interesting here, he could have done a TED Talk. I would have watched it. That would have been more, and that's part of why I feel like this is about just box office returns. And I think, yeah, okay, so the cinematography continues to be amazing. There's flying, there's underwater stuff, the way that scope is captured, and the action feels very visceral in a way that you didn't used to be able to have with PG-13. It used to be a bit more toned down, and I mean, there's still some toning down, but yeah. And the editing, when it isn't montaging our way through stuff that needs to be set up because there's payoff later, which also just like, I'm sorry, but if you're trying to not draw attention to it, don't montage through so much stuff. Just have scenes play out, have them breathe. Because as it is, like, we'll have this brief thing where someone says, oh, by the way, the time has almost come for this thing, and then they just move on. And so we're sitting there like conscious. I can't speak for everyone. I was sitting there consciously thinking, so I guess that's important later, huh? Because you didn't do anything with it. Like there wasn't anything there. And it's, again, like, I'm not seeing very much of this in other recent, like, big blockbuster. I don't watch all of them, but the ones I watch, these comic book adaptations and such, like, they don't tend to be this, like, there was some really on the nose stuff in Mission Impossible 8, I want to say, the most recent one. The movie was actually about that. It didn't just say, oh, hey, this thing is happening, and then a while passes without more. Like, that movie very early on sets up a couple of things, and then the rest of the movie explores those things. Like, there are still people making movies who understand how to do this stuff. Right, I guess I'll just briefly note, this might be... So I don't watch very many streaming movies right now. I've heard that it's pretty bad on, I want to say, Netflix. This thing of second screen viewing writing, where people will repeat what they're working on. I'm willing to acknowledge it has marred some of the more recent MCU movies, but here it was like so. And again, if you're not gonna do anything with it, why are you even restating it? Why are there so many characters if none of them are going to do anything of interest, if none of them have arcs that aren't just so similar to Jake's from the first? It wasn't that interesting in that one. Again, we were saying that in 2009. I'm willing to admit I don't think I made a big enough deal out of it in my video. I hopefully... I've grown, hopefully for the better, over, these 16 years of making these videos, but I'm just not sure Cameron is still that interested in telling stories. It feels like if he was sure that we would pay to just watch, like, a documentary, just like Richard Attenborough, isn't that the name? Just like... and here we see the Ikran. It is the natural predator of the night wolf. Is that what it's called? And here we see an attack because the territory has been violated. I have a very hard time right now not believing that James Cameron would just make that movie. He just wants us to gawk at Pandora. He doesn't seem that invested for the first time in his career. I genuinely don't... I'm repeating myself. It's just very frustrating to see. I believe that he still has something impressive in him. There is stuff here that really works, but we're gonna move on. Production value, amazing. Set design, locations, costumes, makeup, whatever. They're impressive. They help communicate things about the characters. Like, you get a sense of someone by where they live, how they decorate their workplace, stuff like that. The music continues to be really, really impressive. The sound design, everything, that is an area where these, it's similar to, like, Star Wars. Like, things have distinct noises that they make to where it feels real, even though, like, logically we know we're looking at special effects. So the characters, we meet a few new ones, not very many. They don't do that much with the old ones. Like, it just feels like this would work so much better if this was like a bunch of episodes, so we could have some time spent on one character and then some on another, instead of the... nearly everyone in the major cast here deserve a better script. Even Sam Worthington. Who knew? I mean, he's been doing this for 16 years, I think it is. About time he got good. But yeah, he was not very impressive in the first one. Very, very average and bland. The second one, he got better. This one, I think, is the best he's done so far. I mean, I'll acknowledge of the stuff I've watched him in. Other than Avatar, there's Terminator he did, and Clash of the Titans 1 and 2. War of the Titans, I think, was the second one. Yeah, like he's just, he didn't used to be that impressive. He does well here. Una Chaplin is spellbinding. I was genuinely could not take my eyes off. I have to admit, I did not know she was still acting. I am quite fond of. I gotta see more that she's in. I gotta watch more that she's in. She's in one of those Agatha Christie ones from like one of the 70s. Is that right? Am I remembering that right? She was great there. Quite fond of Charlie Chaplin. Also, so. But yeah, the talent went on for her. I'm not super familiar with. Is there more Chaplin family in entertainment? I'm sorry. I don't really know. But yeah, she genuinely. I would not have thought. Like I didn't realize that was her until I read someone note it, and then I went back and rewatched the trailer and was like, that is her. Holy crap. Yeah, she's fantastic. Zoe Saldana continues to be some of the best. Give some of the best performance work in these three movies. She deserves so much better. Her character, I really wish. I hope at some point. I mean, there's 2 movies left. Maybe she'll get something that's worthy of her, because she's so good. She's also someone I want to watch more. I mean, at least James Gunn appreciates her, is willing to give her something that is actually that she can really sink her teeth into. She gives her all. Nothing feels held back. And honestly, it doesn't feel like she thinks that she's being done a disservice. If I don't know if how exactly she feels. It's possible it's just immaculate professionalism, but nothing feels like, sometimes I'm willing to admit, sometimes there are actors that I love where it's like, okay, that was not that person's best work. Sorry, I mentioned love the Terminator, so it's probably not a surprise that I'm a big fan of Michael Biehn. I'm willing to admit, Aliens, Colonial Marines, he didn't do that good of a job. He said that he felt that they weren't, they for them it was just like profit, so he didn't feel that passionate about it, and I'm sorry, it really shows. I don't really blame him. I get that's super frustrating. He's doing this character, decades after he originally played it, and then find out, oh, they don't actually care. That can be quite disheartening. So, yeah, Kate Winslet, great. Another person I have to watch more of is, other than her, also, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who plays Quaritch. Wow, it really is. I think I've only seen one thing that isn't Avatar that he's in, but yeah, gotta see more. He's continuing to impress. I think that might just about right. I know I've made some comments about, like, I maintain, I think they should have done more to the voice. But Sigourney Weaver, considering she's now playing like a teenager, I think they should have done something for the voice. She continues to be great. That is something I appreciate about James Cameron. He looks at like these incredibly talented women, and he doesn't discount them just because of their age. Like, that, genuinely, we do need more of that in Hollywood. Like, holy crap, there's so many incredibly talented people of multiple genders. I'm not seeking to abolish gender. I don't think, what was her name again? Fulnecki, the college student. I don't think she realized that that's technically, she wrote in the essay that she thinks it's harmful to argue that there are multiple genders. And Edgier Than Thou pointed out before does that mean she thinks there's only one gender? Like, conservatives, it would be so much easier to take you seriously if you knew what you were talking about. Like, holy crap. Like, yeah, I know what she means, but like, these are the people that like we're supposed to think as, they understand, it's the left that's just completely lost it. They believe there's multiple genders. I don't love criticizing a college student, but I think you open yourself up to it when you complain that your terrible essay got a bad grade, and I've already mentioned in other videos, but maybe you haven't. Maybe someone's watching this video that hasn't watched those. Other than Edgier Than Thou, Cat Black and Dead Domain did fantastic videos on the essay. I guess that pretty much covers, yeah, as far as the acting, there's some really subtle work that is, it continues to be, like, by now, the novelty's worn off, but it is still, I am very, very glad that we now have such a tremendous level of expression through motion capture. That's the word. That really is a wonderful thing. It's just be great if there was a better script to go with it. But yeah, a lot of subtlety, facial acting that used to only be, live action acting that could do that. And I do think, this does really open up. I just rewatched Fantastic Four: First Steps. That also really nails, there's so much, as someone who's seen Ebon Moss-Bachrach in other stuff, yeah, it really shines through. I wish they gave him more to do in the movie, but hopefully, I mean, he's gonna be in more, so they can give him more. Like, it feels really weird to cast someone that immensely talented, like once in a generation kind of talent, and then give him nothing to do. But moving on. The teenagers, I find their characters annoying, but the actors clearly know what they're doing. I forget if I think I might have said in my video on the second one, I thought they pushed a little too hard on Took being annoying, the child, and they do a better job here. Unfortunately, like a lot of other characters, she is kind of just there. They don't do very much with, like, I think I know. I wish that Cameron had less characters and gave them more to do. I think the reason is that with the second and this, he basically wanted there to be a character for everyone in the audience. Like, if, like, hypothetically, maybe your parents are taking you to a PG-13 movie, so maybe you can, if you're a child, maybe you can see yourself in Took, and that's why there are teenage characters, even though, like, Jake in the first movie, if we're being honest, didn't act with the maturity of much more than a teenager. So, but that's, again, there's a school of thought that says that teenagers can't relate to adults, and I'm willing to acknowledge there are movies that I felt like should have done better, but not enough teenagers went to go see it because they felt like, and I don't know if the problem is the teenagers feel like they can't relate to adults. Like, I remember being a teenager, I related fine to adults. Most of my favorite movies starred adults and playing adults. I mean, not 30-year-olds playing teenagers. And part of that is, yeah, the teenage protagonist movies I had access to tend to be from the 80s. I already mentioned a lot of those are annoying. But yeah, I think that covers that. So yeah, the pacing, it feels so much like there's so much of this movie that is there because it needs to be, not because anyone really wants it in the movie. And so we just have scenes of people explaining things. And I mean, I will at least say, like the second one, this does a much better job of spreading out the action. The first movie, like, I prefer action to adventure. That's, I don't mind that there are movies out there that are more adventure than action. But when you go see a James Cameron movie, you expect action. He tends to deliver action, or, in some cases, like disaster movie kind of stuff. But like adventure, we go to other the people who like adventure go to other directors for that. Like maybe I'd like Stephen Sommers more if I liked adventure. Probably not. My bigger issue is the effects that he, like, I haven't watched every movie he's done, but the ones I've watched, he will always include effects that are CG and like everyone looking can see that's clearly just made in a computer. It's not convincing. He was one of the directors who refused to accept, in the movies I've seen at least, he refused to accept that CG just was not ready to be the centerpiece yet. And that again, Cameron largely waited, like his early CG was the kind of stuff that early CG could do convincingly, like the T-1000, for example. But yeah, there's way too much starting and stopping in this movie. Like I spent so much of it, like really struggling to figure out, like, wait, how far along are we? How close to the end are we? Yeah, and there was at least one action scene that genuinely just felt like, well, it's been a while since we had an action scene. I guess we'll have some. And that again, like, I'm not used to that from James Cameron. He usually, like, that's one of my favorite things about his movies. It used to be that when you watched a James Cameron movie, the action meant something. There was something being communicated, something being accomplished, and there was a while where I thought that was a lost art. I guess this is a decent enough time to mention. So part of the reason, there are other directors where I would probably have just given up on them after Avatar 2. But I only really discovered James Cameron in the late 90s. Before the first Avatar, I didn't watch any James Cameron movie in theaters. And there was about a decade where I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get to. Because, like, we kept hearing about Avatar, and it kept getting delayed. And yeah, for a while, it was like, maybe it's never going to get made. I mean, he ended up not making Alita. Robert Rodriguez made it instead, and now we're probably not going to get a sequel, even though there's stuff in there that you could easily... But yeah. So it's difficult for me to completely let go of watching James Cameron movies in theaters, because every time I've watched a James Cameron movie, before Avatar, I was like, I wish I'd been able to watch that in theaters, And then with Avatar 1, I was happy to be able to watch it in theaters, and somewhat with Avatar 2, and it's just such a letdown. I don't really have more to say about the special effects. I guess I could add, I mean, obviously, still, it's basically constant. I'm not sure there's one shot in this movie that doesn't have some special effect. And yeah, it doesn't continue to feel special. It's not always effective, but it does feel like, yeah, we're witnessing a world that is like this, rather than just like, that's another thing. Like James Cameron, before him, sometimes special effects in movies were just like, I mean, I suppose that was really Star Wars 1. Yeah, A New Hope is what I mean. Was probably the first time where a movie was like, no, special effects can actually do something. You can tell a story. It shouldn't just be, spectacle. Yeah. The action scenes, they do a good job making them varied, and there's a lot of edge of your seat kind of stuff. There's some new, there's a little bit too much redone from the first two, but there is some new stuff here in action scenes and such where it does feel like, okay, they actually, like, that's something that logically can exist in an Avatar movie, but we haven't seen before. The comedy a lot of time doesn't really work. I actually am not entirely sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I laughed even once. They do a good job. The times where they go for horror, it is about as effective as you can get on a PG-13 today. But there's some dark stuff that's, gets to you. And that's another reason I wish I could give this a more positive review, because it does try to explore grief. And I've said it before, grief is one of those things, it's universal yet taboo. Everybody's going to grieve at some point in our lives. I appreciate maybe not everybody grieves over a person, but maybe you're going to grieve over a pet, or, like, yeah. And we don't talk enough about it. So a lot of us have misconceptions. I used to have misconceptions about grief. And I wish this movie did a better job of exploring the grief, because early on it really does do. So Nekatayam is dead, and at least one character questions, is this someone's fault? And that is such a human thing. Like, we feel a need to assign blame when we lose someone close to us. And I appreciated the movie bringing it up. I wish it had done more with it, but it could have done worse. And yeah, there's still some cool sci-fi stuff. There's not that much new, but yeah, one or two things that yeah. And they continue to add to the lore and world building and such. I think that yeah. So as far as age rating, I mean, it does fine with, so I don't know if you're aware, but yeah, it is now okay to use one F word. You get one. I don't think I'm gonna say it in this particular video. I don't have a problem with it. I just, watch one of my videos, one of my recent videos on something rated R or TVMA or something, and you'll see I'm perfectly fine using the F word. But I appreciate the versatility of the word, And that's one of the lines that I do like from the Boondock Saints, even though on the whole I don't think that movie is that good, even though I did used to like it. But the yeah, so there's one F-bomb in here in the movie, and yeah, other than that, there is, they are now able to show some blood, and they can't like linger on a wound, but they can show a little bit, and it helps. It makes it feel more like it's real and stuff is happening. Let's see, I think it was the abridged script, I forget of which movie, but of some movie, pointed out in The Dark Knight Rises, bullets seem to just make people real sleepy. And that's one issue where, there's a lot I love about Christopher Nolan. I do think he should have filmed some of that stuff differently to make it feel less, yeah, that's genuinely awkward, you know. And yeah, here they do a better job. One thing I also quite appreciated that I noticed on more than one occasion, someone is shot with a gun or the like. Sometimes it's an arrow, and the person will dramatically like fall, perhaps like fall out of frame or the like. That makes us feel an impact, even if you're not able to show a detailed, grisly look at like a bullet hitting or a bleeding, you know, gushing blood wound, the kind of thing you might see in an R-rated movie, you know. So that is something like I hope, you know, if he keeps making movies, I hope he goes back to making R-rated movies, because I do think he delivered some really great, like, that's another thing. The Terminator, that first movie, fantastic on like giving us stuff that's like nightmarish, you know, really, really horrifying R-rated violence there. You know, considering the subject matter, which I guess crap. Okay, so it's saying there might be issues with the quality. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, I don't think I'm going to give away in this video, but yeah, considering the subject matter of the Terminator, I think it's appropriate to have more harsh material there. Yeah, I guess right. Yeah, no, that's a spoiler. Okay, yeah. Google said no post credits, so I did not stay to find out. And yeah, so I'm gonna give my ranking of James Cameron movies. So the ones he wrote but did not direct. And I guess I'll briefly note, I've watched everything that, let's see, I haven't watched the ones where, like, if you look on IMDb, they technically show up, but it's like, well, somebody else, like, remade a movie that he wrote. You know, I haven't watched those. But the ones that he wrote for. Haven't watched some of the documentaries, I guess I'll briefly note. So the ones I haven't watched: Expedition Bismarck, Last Mysteries of the Titanic, Years of Living Dangerously, James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. But yeah, so the ones he's written but not directed, ranked worst to best: Dark Fate, Rambo 2, Alita, and Strange Days. And all of those are movies that I've found something to love about. I don't know that I would say that I fully love any of them. I wish I did. There's good stuff in there. And the ones he's directed, and yeah, some of them he also wrote. And yeah, I don't love the bottom two. You know what? I think I'll just note. Well, I guess you might be able to tell based on what I've said earlier in this video when the ones I love start. But okay, we're gonna move on. Yeah, worst to best, and I do not love the bottom two. True Lies, Avatar 3, The Abyss, Avatar 1, Avatar 2, Titanic, Terminator 2. You know, yeah, okay. I love Titanic, and I love the top two. And the other ones, ultimately, I don't know that I could really say I fully love. But yeah, the top two are Aliens and Terminator 1. Yeah. It was honestly close to this one being the actual bottom. But overall, there's just, like, I've done an entire video on True Lies, so I won't spend forever on, I guess, yeah, I think I'm just gonna move on to the, yeah, so, I really hate to say it, but my rating is 6 agonizing adventures in the Avatar universe, which has already started self-cannibalizing, as others have noted, out of 10. And with that, we do enter the spoiler section, or what I call the thoughts section. So I guess I'll start with, okay, so when I watched the Terminator 1, I felt like James Cameron was a man who appreciated the strength of women, the positive aspects of their socialization. I'm not doing gender essentialism here. When I watched Aliens, I felt like that expanded on it and acknowledged, you know what, which is something like way too many people refuse to acknowledge. I understand this is also something Anya Taylor-Joy is, she tries to incorporate in movies where it made sense to. Under the right circumstances, yes, women are willing to engage in violence and might even be really good at it. There are a number of conservatives who can't respect people who aren't willing to engage in violence. I wish they would, but I mean, if it works, because I don't think that movie does a bad job of it, even if apparently Sigourney Weaver was not the biggest fan at first. And then he made The Abyss, which feels like just him throwing his hands in the air and saying, ugh, wives are so frustrating. And then he made True Lies, and it really felt like he just hated all women now. Wives, daughters. I guess it's a spoiler to specify, but others as well. Yeah, that's why that movie is at the bottom. It's such an angry, hateful movie. I would never have guessed that James Cameron would make a movie that had that little empathy. It really does not seem to think highly of anyone other than some cishet white men, which, wow. This one isn't as misogynistic as True Lies. Thankfully. It would be very difficult for it to be, but it is still very, so it goes even further than the second one. And I think I'm just going to get it, cover that entire aspect before I move on to other stuff, because, so too much of this movie is Jake telling Neytiri what something should be like, and we're supposed to side with him. We're supposed to think that he's right. They do have to fight. They have to focus on fighting. And again, like, James Cameron used to be willing to acknowledge a lot of the time women are right about, like, we men have got to get better at processing our emotions. And I really wish that we weren't getting movies that are this bigoted today, when there's like, fascism is on the rise. Like, hopefully, like, it looks like maybe finally there will be, maybe they will be able to stop Trump. Obviously, I hope it's going to be completely non-violently. Violence should only ever be the last resort. I did appreciate that, the Tulkun acknowledged the, circular nature of violence. But then by the end, they engage in violence, so I guess we're supposed to think they're hypocrites or something. But yeah, the movie keeps cutting back to Quaritch and the general and various other, so it's like, well, see, Jake's right. They have to fight. Neytiri just lost a son. So did Jake, but like, she is saying we have to grieve. And yeah, like the fact that the movie is so much on his side, like it seems as though like Neytiri, when she's helping, I'm afraid I forget her name, but the Kate Winslet character, give birth and promising to take care of the baby, and when she's kicking ass, that's good. But other than that, like, it feels like the movie is saying, oh, women, they're so emotional. She just lost a kid. I appreciate so did he, but she carried Nekatam. And it's also just so disrespectful to, like, so, okay, other than gender, there's also the cultural thing. So he's a white American man, and there is a thing there of being, like, very solution-oriented, like focusing on, what can we do? What's the next thing that we can solve? And I'm very solution-oriented. I feel best when I'm able to make progress towards resolving an issue. But that doesn't mean that that's better, but it's this thing of like crafting a movie that, because you so easily could, you could have had him grieving as well. You didn't have to be the conflict between them. And I'm so freaking over this crap of like, ugh, if only this woman who's maybe even ethnic would just listen to the cishet white man. Why won't women just listen? I don't know. Maybe because we cishet white, okay, not only white, but cishet men have been controlling human society for so very long, and we've made a mess of it. So maybe it's time to listen to empathy, aka women. And yeah, other than so yeah, that's his culture. Her culture is this native tribe. And in the first movie, it really was clear that Cameron, at least when making that movie, felt that we can learn a lot. It was very much a movie about the community of the Na'vi, this tribe, I'm sorry, I simply cannot remember all these names, but I do care. The main tribe, the one that Jake joins. Yeah. Omaticaya, the Omaticaya tribe, are clearly the better culture. And in the second one, we have some stuff where Jake, the white man, is telling the natives, no, you don't understand. This is how it has to be. So still doing the white savior decades after, like, it was kind of an agreement that, maybe we should stop doing this because, like, the whole white savior narrative tends to whitewash colonialism and imperialism. And now it's this thing of like, ugh, why can't this tribeswoman just stop grieving? There's stuff to do. And it seems like they're regressing his character because he's still, like, in the second movie, I believe it's Neytiri who says, this is not a squad, this is a family. And in this one, he's still treating them like a squad. Why are we making so little progress? It's spinning its wheels. So many hours, so much money, and so little accomplished. It's just... And in this one, in addition to that regression, we also have that now he says like he starts disrespecting the Umaticaya tribe traditions, and he says that she must be racist. And I'm having Die Hard with a Vengeance flashbacks. Like, why can't you just admit you hate white people? I don't know, maybe because it's not as important, because white people run America and are using that power to abuse minorities. So many people have had their lives ruined, some even ended, by ICE recently, since Trump entered his second term. And we have a movie the same year where a white man tells a native person that she must be racist. I appreciate that there are some people who feel very complex emotions about biracial identity. But this movie is doing a terrible job of exploring that. I appreciate he apologizes, but it's still just so... That didn't need to be the conflict. I'm not saying you can't have conflict when there's like a married couple. You know, there's characters that are in a married couple in a movie that otherwise also has conflict. And I'm also not one of those people who say that, oh, if there's no conflict, you don't have a movie. No, you can do other stuff. But like, you know, ideally you have something interesting there, but it doesn't have to be conflict. But it's also just like, that's again, I don't know if James Cameron has the highest opinion of like married couples. It just feels like bickering for the sake of it. And I'm sorry, but I freaking hate the way that Neytiri and the Kate Winslet character talk to each other. This thing about like it's such a patriarchal propaganda BS thing of like, you know, women just can't like each other. You know, if you get two alpha women in the same room, there's gonna be so much conflict. And then you look at like reality and like, I'm not saying it never happens, but there's so many men who, if they see a man who they consider to be superior, they're not going to try to learn from that man. They're going to try to destroy him. Sometimes they kill the other man because that's the only way they can feel good about themselves. But no, let's make a movie where a woman tells a pregnant woman that she's going to forget that she's pregnant. You know, implying that she's going to violently assault her in a way that she wouldn't if she were worried that it would hurt the baby. Like, holy crap. I'm not saying that women can't, you know, be bad towards other women. One thing is, if you're going to bring something like that up, you had better actually take it seriously. It feels like it's, what is it even there for? By the end of the movie, the Kate Winslet character is dead, and you know Neytiri is adopting her kid daughter. Yeah, daughter they say, and I mean I'm guessing that character is that the baby is going to be a character in one of the next movies, or maybe we're just going to have, you know. So this one has a pregnant woman endangered. I guess the second one did as well. I think. I guess maybe one of the next ones is going to be the actual baby that's in danger. And I mean, I guess the idea is supposed to be, you know, they argued, but once one of them dies, the other one will take care of their baby. Yeah, that's kind of the bare minimum. Like, I'm sorry, if, like, let's hypothetically say that Ava Braun, I want to say her name is, Hitler's partner. Let's say that she gave birth right in front of me and then died. So that's, you know, maybe Hitler's kid, baby. I'm still going to make sure that kid has as good a life as possible. And I would argue Hitler is one of the worst people to have ever existed. And it was, to be clear, I'm not one of those people who say, oh, he was like born evil. No, no, no. He was abused, and then he chose to embrace evil rather than choosing, he chose to become the next abuser and did so much worse than was done to him. Like, by definition, he killed people. Nobody killed him. And, yeah, I don't know. It just, I think the last thing about the misogyny is the Una Chaplin character, and I'm afraid I forget her name, and I probably mispronounce it anyway. Which ties in to the other big tree. I worried about this when I saw the trailer. I was really, I was kind of dreading this from the moment that we saw her character in the trailer some months back. From what I understand, James Cameron, appreciates how horrible the genocide of Native Americans and genocide of Native and Indigenous populations in general is. How beautiful a culture they have, and how much we should do to empathize with them. And the first two movies seem to very much go in that direction. Like, whatever, it's not like, in the second one, it's not like perfect. In the first one, it's not that far from perfect. It's just Jake being an a-hole. It's not really them being particularly unreasonable, and the movie sides too much with him. But then in this one, I don't know what. Okay, so I appreciate that he wanted to do something with hate. That is something that is brought up multiple times. And that's, again, why is Jake the one telling Neytiri we can't live with hate? He's the one who used to be okay with, perhaps not eradication, but he wanted them forcibly moved in the first movie, and then he became one of them, and now he's talking about, like, holy crap, would you please stop white-splaining Cameron? I mean, Jake. I mean, both. It's just like, why are the natives depicted as so harmful? Why is the native being told not to hate and that she's the racist? That's not the problem we're having right now. Like, how do you put this movie out the way that America looks today? I appreciate that when it was written, it wasn't as bad as it is now, but Trump made quite clear 10 years ago what he was intending. In some ways, he is just doing what he said back then that he wanted to. Why does this movie not criticize that? Like, I'm sorry, but there's gonna be white cishet dudes that are gonna watch this movie and be like, I knew it. I knew we were better than them. See how awful they are. Okay, so let's walk with me here. Okay, so in this movie, the Una Chaplin character lives down to the exact things that racists have been perpetuating against Native Americans for, I forget the exact, well, yeah, it must be hundreds of years by now. 500 years? I'm terrible with numbers sometimes, but so basically, she does the equivalent of scalping people, which is, or they even at one point Quaritch calls it scalping, and the movie does not acknowledge, because again, it's clearly drawing parallels to Native Americans and the way that white settlers carried out a genocide against them, and there were white people scalping, and then some Native Americans also started doing it. And to this day, you have white, racist, conservative Americans saying, well, of course we had to genocide the Native Americans. They were scalping people. And I appreciate some of them maybe don't know that there were also white people scalping, but I feel like that kind of, you know, I mean, if you're saying that, yeah, you're making my point. That's what I'm saying. There's too much ignorance around this. We have to be more careful about perpetuating these harmful ideas. Like just recently, I think it was in a video by Somewhere News, there was this video where someone was saying that not only were they happy about the destruction of these Venezuelan boats, which, like, there's evidence that at least some of them, allegedly, whatever, don't sue me. Allegedly, at least some of these boats were likely fishing boats. So, just people trying to make an honest living and getting murdered because America has decided that that's what it feels like doing. It makes Hexa feel like a man, And fragile masculinity is the cause of so many problems, and yet this movie would rather focus on, look at those scary natives. I mean, I'm terrible at remembering the historical, but there was this nomadic people where, like, they would go around and just like destroy and steal, and then they would like salt the earth. That's kind of what I was reminded of. It didn't really remind me of any, indigenous or native population. A lot of them, there's like territorial disputes sometimes, but a lot of them would like trade and try to befriend. Like, if you actually look at, there's stories where, like, what are those called again? Missionaries, I guess, would like go to a tribe, and some people back home would make a huge deal out of, oh, look, they were greeted with violence, and then you actually read the details, like, well, the missionaries refused the gifts. The tribe was trying to befriend them, and refusing the gift was perceived as basically saying, no, I think we should be enemies. And so they acted on that, I mean, if you want to call it a miscommunication, but the missionaries should maybe just have thought about it. Like, it's just them trying to, like, if you're going to be a missionary, maybe consider actually empathizing with the people that you meet. Don't try to live the same way out there that you do back home. Like, why are you even a missionary then? And I'm not saying that I'm 100%, I'm very set in my ways. I would struggle with it. Guess what? I'm not a freaking missionary. There's some things that you just choose. We all need to exercise insight about ourselves and other cultures and act on it. There are things that I know I would not do well at, so I try to avoid those things. And there's a lot of conservatives that I wish would try to do the same instead of trying to force a square peg into a round hole and then screaming and crying and sometimes killing when it doesn't work. So other than the scalping, she violates other people's will by, the forcible, which, I mean, we already know there's sometimes it's like sex when two people, combine the hair thing. Is she raping them? Because I know that's a trope that I really thought we got rid of some decades back, but there used to be a lot of movies where if you had a female villain, she was going to be a rapist. As if, listen, there are so many cases. I'm not saying it's all. I forget the numbers. Please look them up at your own, if you would like. I'm terrible at remembering these things. I'm not saying it's all. But there is a certain percentage of rapes that are carried out by men, and a lot of those, nothing actually happens. There was crap. I'm afraid I forget who posted it, but I saw this excellent point. Someone, pointed out drug dealers get higher prison sentences than rapists. People ask for drugs. No one asks to be raped. And it's, again, just like, you don't need it. What's it there for? What's it there for other than to say, oh, look at how terrible this woman is for raping? Like, yeah, rape is terrible, but we have such a huge problem. Like, right now, there are so many men who will insist the rape either doesn't exist or that it's only women doing it. And they'll make excuses for obvious cases where a man raped a woman, sometimes killed her, especially if he, realized she was trans. And it doesn't need to be in there. It absolutely doesn't. Like, if I don't even, was it, I think maybe it's like getting information, but just have a conversation then. And let's see, she gives the guy drugs more or less without him asking for it. She also cuts his skin. She talks about how she's going to destroy everything. She wants to sacrifice a living person. She wants to cut out the heart. These are all things that there are white nationalists screaming, look, this is what Native and Indigenous people do. Of course we have to genocide them. We have to kick the immigrants out of the country. And this movie, I cannot believe if Cameron could not do a story without evil Na'vi, then I think he should have let someone else tell the story. Someone who could. I get he wants this one to be darker. I get that he wants the villain to be despicable, to mutilate, or at least threaten to do so, to violate other people's will and body, and to want to burn the world to the ground because of something that happened to themselves. Okay, so make it a cishet white dude. Like, even if you want to say, oh, but he wants the visual of Na'vi, okay, make it recoms, recombinants, like Quaritch. Make it a faction of the RDA that, like, splintered off. And now Quaritch is going, now they're like, pirates-ish, they're attacking the trade ship thing. Sorry about the autofocus. And you have the, and he ends up, working with them. Because that's a real problem. Like, right now, we're having these problems with cishet white conservative men in America going out and murdering, and it's just, I can hardly believe that this movie came out. If I had no idea, if I somehow wasn't online or something and hadn't heard anything about this, and I just found a movie called Avatar 3 and saw all this stuff, I would be like, wow, I wouldn't have expected them to have such good effects for something made in the, I don't know, 70s or 80s or something. Like, one of the worst parts about the misogyny is also that, I mean, the movie's kind of saying that both Neytiri and the Kate Winslet character are wrong, because Neytiri, there's that thing about, like, Kate Winslet points out, you would heal faster if you rested like I told you. I mean, that is kind of true. Like, it can be difficult, but, the movie doesn't really interrogate that. And then at the same time, yeah, like, the Kate Winslet character has terrible bedside manner, and yeah. And you even have the part where she talks to Kiri, and at first it sounds like she's saying, get out, you don't belong here. Thankfully, it turns out what she actually means is, you are here for a purpose, I'm just not sure what it is yet. that's another thing. Like, why does James Cameron not know that in the real world there are women who like each other, care about each other? Just like, maybe I'm misremembering, but right now I don't think I can think of one case where two female characters actually, in this movie, actually care about each other, like outside of just like, well, the Sully women want the other Sully women to be safe, but like that's basically it. They barely listen to Kiri and Took when they say that they don't want Spider to be, taken away from the family. Like all they do is like, well, we'll go with. Just yeah. Um, that's another thing. Like, is Took in this movie for any other purpose than to be in danger? Like, that's another thing. Like, are we seriously still doing that? Putting small children in danger just for the excitement of the audience? What is it saying? Other than, oh, Quaritch and the Una Chaplin character are willing to murder children, which again, harmful trope when dealing with, you've got a female character who not only does not want to bring life into the world, she wants to take it out, she wants to kill children. And the the idea of native people being a danger to others, because keeping in mind, technically Took is part, I guess, part Avatar. I don't even know exactly what to call it, but her father used to be a human. Did appreciate that they used the term pink skin instead of white. Maybe I'm a broken record, but I've never seen, like, okay, you know what? White skin. Well, if you're an albino or like maybe inbred, or you just don't get enough sun. And I know I want to talk, but like usually when I look at people who look like me, I think that's pink skin. And it's very obviously, there's a lot of white nationalists who like using the word white because it implies subconsciously purity, which obviously suggests that if you're not white, there's something inherently wrong with you, which again, like, listen, they're not the ones, carrying out all this genocide that... I'm going to move on. So I appreciate that, the one arc in the movie, everybody has Jake's arc. Some they have to find their place in the world and accept some of what they've learned and reject some of it and carve their own path. It's so stereotypical. Why do we have so many characters going through that exact thing? Like, I'm sorry, I was okay with that when James Cameron was making movies with like one protagonist each. That worked fine. The Terminator, Aliens, maybe The Abyss, Titanic, it can work. He can make it work. But if you have this many... Okay, so Jake, still going through it. He regresses. He's like, why do we have to respect this? Am I supposed to like him? I'm sorry. Are we doing a heel turn? Is he going to be the villain? I'm okay with that. Please either stop regressing him or just have him actually become the villain. Okay, so this is the guy who spent months infiltrating them for selfish reasons, lying to them, lying to this woman that he then ends up marrying. He embraces their culture, and now he turns around and says, oh, you wish that you didn't have kids with me because I'm a pink skin, and you just hate pink skin. This is... I saw, like, there was, I think it was, the video was by Elliot Sang again. He pointed out, someone posted, I think it was one of those AITH, the one of those Reddit posts, and someone had the goal to say, okay, so I'm a white guy and I married this Indian woman and she keeps making Indian food, and then she got upset when I told her to just make normal food. Am I really the bad guy? Like, how can you, do you hear yourself? I'm sorry, why did you marry an Indian woman if you weren't comfortable eating Indian food? What is even, like, the unchecked privilege to tell someone, hey, now that we're together, you're going to abandon the culture that I knew you had. You have so much power in this relationship, and you're choosing to exercise it to pressure her. And that's who Jake Sully is being in this movie. It's just like... So anyway, other than Jake, Neytiri is like, I'm so far from home. I don't have contact with my own people anymore. So she has to find her way. Loak, Kiri, Spider, sort of Quaritch. Like, I'm sorry, but why, if you only have one arc, why do you want so many characters to just go through? Because they don't even really... It's not that they feed into each other. What's the word? They don't really... Okay, so as I already mentioned, I am watching Arrow Season 2. There are multiple characters on there who are having similar arcs, but they will, like, interact. Their arc will interact in ways where, like, maybe someone is one... at one place of their arc and someone else is on another place, and it's this thing of like, well, are they gonna judge that character for not being as far along, or are they gonna try to guide them so they don't make the same mistakes? That's how you do it. But in this movie, they just all coexist. They're just right next to each other, and nothing... And they actually, at times, they even do, there's that thing about, like, Kiri's like, well, I guess I can't ever be part of that. She's sitting there by herself, and then Spider swims up and is like, both of them wish that they could be part of it. And he says, oh, if only I had the hair tail. And then later he gets it, and he's interacting. And they do the community thing. Took, Spider, and Kiri are all going, and they actually get access to the warrior mother. And I kind of hope that if we see her again, we don't see more, because I thought it worked that we just see the face. Like, I'm sorry, it's a deity, okay, one way, I think it works well if they keep it mysterious like they did here. Otherwise, just go, like, I don't know, maybe campy or something, have, like, an over-the-top Greek god. Like, okay, so obviously screw James Woods. He's very much canceled. Those tweets are absolutely horrible, but his Hades, that sort of thing, I could enjoy that. I don't know if Cameron would be great at writing and directing that sort of thing, but either of those options. But yeah, they actually, that was the one time where I felt that worked. But other than that, they're just going through like, Loak is basically going through nearly the exact same thing that Jake was in the first one. Like, he's talking about, like, oh, you have to do this thing, and they're like, nope, that's against our rules. And by the end, he's able to do it. And then, like, Jake practically comes out and says, hey, you're doing the same thing I did, just, mildly different. That was also, like, I'm sorry, are we... Because the second movie seems to be saying we have to... crap. What's the term? There's a specific... So let's see. The first movie is protect the rainforest, and I agree. To be clear, I agree with the most progressive messages of these three films. The second one, save the whales. That's it, right? For some reason, I can never quite remember that one. But yeah, even the second one, it felt genuine. And then in this one, it's like, well, these whales, if they're not willing to fight, I guess that's just going to be like... In the second movie, I thought it worked that you had Pekatan. I think the outcast, that was also, I am Spartacus. I should watch Spartacus again. I will watch Spartacus again. I think I have to figure out if I'm going to do a video on it, but I do freaking love that movie. 1980? 1980s, at least. I forget the exact year, but boy, is that a much better movie than this one. Yeah, yeah, in the second one you have the outcast whale, the Tulkun, fighting. And I think I did say that in my video on the second one. James Cameron, like, he knows there's a lot of people, there's a lot of conservatives. The only way to get them to care about someone who's in danger is to say, oh, but they're willing to fight. They're a badass. And then in this one, he's like, well, I don't know if they're not, because it's like so clear. If they don't fight, they are all going to die. And I appreciate sometimes violence is necessary. Like I already mentioned, should be the last resort. Usually violence begets more violence. You're just kicking the can down the road. If you think you're solving it with violence, you're probably missing some problem. A quick some more news. Did a video, part one of they're talking about Bush Jr. And they talked about the mess that America caused in the Middle East. Which was them somehow this magical thinking of like, oh, it's gonna work out well. And with that said, there are of course cases. It was necessary to stop the Nazis in World War II. Stonewall needed to happen. So why are we like that's the thing. At the end of the second movie, I really thought we were past this. I thought, okay, so see, at least one Tulkun is willing to fight. I thought that was going to mean, that the other Tulkun would be on board with it. Like, why are we just redoing so much of the second movie with much less impact? Just yeah. Let's see. So we have the element of Quaritch, gradually becoming more and more, and that again feels like they're just. I mean, they did it a little bit in the second. They're going further with it here. He's going. He's becoming more like the natives. You have that one military guy, Wainwright, I think his name is, who keeps saying, "Are we really doing this?" And he keeps going further. And by the end, he's not invited to the briefing. He's got the war paint on and everything, and they say you're confined to quarters. So they're doing a thing here, but what is like, I mean, he didn't turn good like Jake did. Are they? I mean, by the end, he still comes close to winning. So it's not like, I mean, it didn't make him weaker. It just made the humans not really willing to accept him. And I appreciate, that is like, there's a lot of problems with military and militarism. One of them is the fact that if you're doing the right thing, but it's going against orders, nope, you're dishonorably discharged. We're going to ruin as much of your life as we can because you didn't obey us. Conservatives love to force people to obey. And, including, not limited to, sometimes especially, when they know they're wrong, when you can prove to them, hey, if I obey this, it's going to make things worse. And they're still going to be like, no, I want your obedience because my ego is that frail. Yeah, that's not what they say because they don't have that much self-awareness. So I don't know what they're doing with that other than making that really obvious commentary, which they already did better in the first movie, where they go against Jake when, like, I mean, all he really did was you told him to infiltrate, and he does that, and then, like, there's a video where he says they're never gonna leave, and that's, like, supposed to be proof that he betrayed them, and okay, at this point, I would like to note, that's not really me critiquing the first movie. That's something I felt like worked in that. Like I said, I just rewatched it a few days ago, and yeah, that right. I appreciate the commentary on. You had when he's in like a cage, and it's even described as, a cage like an animal, and you have the press there just gleefully taking pictures, and someone says, I can't believe they got him. They're just bloodthirsty. I mean, they know that he's going to be executed, and no one there seems to stop and say, is this right though? And that sadly is like, now they're it looks like even more of the American press is going to start sucking up to Trump. So that was something, at least, like, that's Cameron, can you please just go back to that? Can you just make movies that are commenting on negative aspects of American culture and history, and not do this weird, bigoted, like, yeah. The Una Chaplin character also reminded me somewhat of an anti-theist. Like, she says, "Oh, we prayed for salvation and none came." Okay, she's going gore, I guess, and I don't know. I don't think that it's necessarily a problem. Right now. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. One thing that I appreciate about it is that it doesn't feel like it's saying that if you're not Christian, you're wrong, because it's about AWA. It's about this, native religion. It's spiritualism and such, and I get that they're doing a thing of like, see, there's Na'vi who don't believe, and that makes them dangerous. If you don't have a guiding light, you can end up dangerous. I've already described what I felt should be done instead of the tribe, the Ash tribe. But the let's see. Yes. So it was pretty exhausting to see Kiri continue to plug in and still not get anything. I really didn't feel like they needed to reiterate that. They could have, like, early in the movie, they say it. I don't think we needed to see her fail at it. I think it was fine to just only have the part where it ends up working. Yeah, that also, again, like I said, redoing Jake's arc. Kiri, contacts Awa and says, you have to help us fight, otherwise it's all going to be destroyed. Yeah, that's what Jake did in the first movie. Neytiri even said, Awa does not take sides, and now apparently she does, and it's the war mother or something. It's just, it didn't need to be in there. Like, didn't we already do this enough? Like, could it maybe just be that Kiri doesn't need to ask the war mother, just coordinate maybe? So she's trying to access it because she has an inherent set, she's on the ground, and the war mother, I don't know, maybe news travels slowly up there or something. I think that could work. I do not think we needed such a direct repeat. Let's see. Yeah, the balloons, fantastic. So freaking cool when Jake is on top of it, and holes are made and flames are spreading and he's running away. Incredible. Loved when they're flying around, firing bows and arrows, firing machine guns. Let's see. Right. Maybe I'm willing to accept. Some people might disagree. I really felt like the various human vehicles tended to be destroyed way too easily in this one. That was something I really felt worked in the first two. Yes, even the second. The way that, if you want to destroy one of these, you gotta like fire an arrow with a bomb into one of the helicopter rotors or something. And then in this one, they just kind of drop stuff on it, and immediately, like, I think they had an idea that we need X amount, there's a higher number, or maybe it's just a higher number of big ones, but it seems like there's more destruction of human vehicles in this one than the first two, possibly combined. And so some of them, a lot of them, maybe most of them, maybe nearly all of them are destroyed really, really quickly once attacks on them start happening. The thing about you're getting thrown into the flux vortex. Okay, so this is the thing that you mentioned in the first one that means that your instruments don't work super well, and now it's just like a fantasy, Pandora style tornado kind of thing. And it's like, I'm really looking forward to playing Just Cause 4. Yeah, I think I don't know how much more I have to say. I'm sure you're sick of listening to me if you're still here. I don't know. I still struggle to make these, the negative ones, particularly entertaining, I guess. The thing about, I don't remember all their names, but I appreciated, Loax, the girl he like, Freya, something like that. I appreciated her stuff, though. Again, they don't give her very much to do, but at least there is, that's the thing. It's not that the female characters in this movie are never depicted in a positive light. It just tends to be when they're interacting with men, and that just feels so weirdly regressive. This thing of like, because like there are a number of misogynistic men who are very uncomfortable about women having female friends, and part of it is if there's two women together in a bar and a man tries to approach one of them, the other woman might, verbally like, confront him, and he might have to leave, or he might, verbally, like he might really become angry at them, and either way he doesn't end up with the girl. And he doesn't stop. A lot of men don't stop and think, wait, is that because the woman that I was trying to flirt with really didn't want me to? And a lot of women know that if they just say no to a man who's flirting with them, the man is just going to become insistent, and that's why a lot of women go in pairs to bars and clubs and such. Instead, the man thinks, if only that other woman wasn't there. It's just her that's the problem. This girl was really enjoying flirting with me. That's why she didn't tell her friend that she wanted me to keep flirting with her, because obviously that would be impossible. Like, just... It's very common for bigots to misidentify where the problem actually is. And a lot of cishet men really struggle with the concept that someone they're attracted to isn't necessarily trying to attract them and isn't attracted to them. And yeah, just so that's her character. Yeah, the two guys from the Water Tribe, like, they barely did it. Like, again, there was a reason for them to be in the second movie. You had the thing about like, he's the screw up kid, so Toak covers for him and explains to him, and then they become friends. That's actually that's a decent enough story. But then here, there's nothing. Like, they just hang out for a while, and then they do the I'm Spartacus thing, and that's kind of it. And again, like, it is so important that we challenge ideas, traditions, and welcome new ideas. But why are you doing that through the lens of this native indigenous people, though? Like, that's not really, because that again seems to suggest, because again, it's coming from the white guy, or in this case the guy who's, his father is white, or was white, and I wonder how many people, screamed about, transracial isn't a real thing, love these movies. And, I'm not going to get into the whole transracial thing. I think Kat Black did a fantastic job talking about that, and I don't know anywhere near enough. I'd just be restating what she said, but I mean, suffice it to say, no, that wasn't really something that a bunch of, leftists were saying was a real thing. There was like, I forget if it was even more than one, but there were a few people who were saying that, but it wasn't a widely accepted leftist idea, the way that right now there's a lot of conservatives in America who are saying, you know, what ICE is doing is good. Like, that's now a fairly mainstream idea. On the right, that's a problem. Why are you attacking ideas that most leftists don't agree with and acting like, oh, this is what the left does? Oh, right, because that our actual ideas are very popular, hence Mamdani winning. Now, let's see. So yeah. Yeah, did I already say so? So yeah, I said, I don't think they should use the lens of these native peoples to say, we have to challenge tradition. You should be doing that with the cishet white culture. And it's right there. Quaritch is right there. Have him and the general. And was Giovanni Ribisi even in the second movie? Other than that, there was the video for the recom thing, but I don't remember seeing him on Pandora. And I literally just rewatched, whatever. He's on Pandora again, you could have him, and there is sort of like, I didn't think it was necessarily terrible the way that there was a little bit of conflict there between the three of them, but yeah, like it didn't seem like they were really doing a thing of like, oh well, this other idea actually does work, other than that Quaritch does come close. But I mean, so did the tech of the that also seemed like it was working. Like, they're both in the climax and they're both defeated there. I think Cameron wants me to care about whether or not Quaritch died as he falls into the fire there at the end. What do you, like, death is meaningless. You made that choice with the second movie. As soon as Quaritch and all these guys came, and some girls, at least one girl, came back as recoms, it's like, okay, so nobody dies, and I forget who, but another YouTuber already pointed out, didn't the greedy guy, the who loves to kill whales, didn't he die in the second movie? And technically we don't see him die. We see his arm ripped off. Now he's back and he's got, robot arm, because Cameron at this point just wants to have flashy tech stuff in his movies. Like, it doesn't do anything. Why are you bringing Quaritch back and giving this guy a prosthetic limb if you're not going to do anything with it? Like, we need more stories that deal with, that actually acknowledge the humanity of people with various disabilities. And this is not, to be clear, I'm not saying that as someone, I am, let's see, I believe I still qualify as able-bodied despite my various physical pains. I need to look at that. Anyway, I don't have a prosthetic limb, but I have heard from people who do and people who are very in touch with the community. They want their stories told, and we've been getting some of that recently. The Book of Boba Fett technically does have some exploration of, people with prosthetic limbs. It's not like perfect, but why is he just that? Like, are we, please tell me we're not supposed to be like creeped out by the very visible prosthetic limb, because they made sure to give him one that, it, why does it look so much like a Terminator arm? Like, is he just really upset that he hasn't made Terminator movies since 1991, or a good one since 1984? I mean, let's be honest. There was probably, I don't know if, okay, I've heard some people say maybe Dan Trachtenberg should do something with Terminator the way he did with Predator. I'm there for it, 100%. If anybody's gonna be able to do it, please don't let it be J.J. Abrams. Oh my god, that might be the first Terminator movie I wouldn't watch. Anyway, right, and crap. That's not like an anti-Semitic thing. The fact that J.J. Abrams is Jewish doesn't bother me in the slightest. It has nothing to do with that. I just don't think he is that. I don't think he did that good of a job with Star Wars. I think Rian Johnson was significantly better for recent Star Wars than J.J. Abrams was. Not to mention the various shows tend to be better than the movies. But the I really, really hope that Cameron isn't trying to say, look at how creepy he is with his metal arm. Like, I hope I'm wrong. Okay, you know what? I'm not even saying that that's what the movie is saying. I'm saying I hope it's not what the movie is saying. I'm not entirely sure. It's just that it's so regressive and problematic and offensive in so many ways that I really wouldn't rule it out. And I genuinely am not entirely sure why you wouldn't do something with it. Like something I've heard from advocates, people who have a prosthetic limb. If you're going to do a story, you know, some of them like for it to be very visible, like draw attention to itself, and be like expressing their personality. And that's again where, like, I mean, you could give some color. I wouldn't rule out, like, I know some of them like the idea of, you know, maybe you could have like a special tool in it. You know, he's a whale fisherman. He could have like a prosthetic, like maybe there's a hand that, like, you know, disappears into the wrist, and then out comes like a gun that can shoot something that helps with the whaling thing, you know, something like that. You know, I'm not saying that everybody would like that, especially considering he's still a villain, but there are some who do really like that sort of thing. Yeah, I did think they did a better job with Jermaine Clement. He was pretty wasted in the second movie, which really, like, he's so talented. But here, you know, him driving the massive thing, and you know, he gets to drop the one F-bomb. You know, the thing about, like, is my effing protest noted now, a-holes? You know, that was pretty good. And I appreciate that he gets to be really useful without engaging in violence, because it would feel really weird if he was suddenly like shooting people. It's like, what? No, he's a marine biologist. Enjoyed that one or more military people are like, stop! You in the vehicle who's obviously not following our orders, just stop! You know, because they think that, oh, you can just order around. You know. It reminded me of one particular part. You can probably deduce which I mean, of Full Metal Jacket. You know, one of those that a lot of people seem to misread. And I don't really understand. I felt like it was extremely clear what they were trying to do, and I thought it absolutely worked. And it's an important point to make about how some military people, you know, just don't, like, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and then they start shooting at it. It's like thick steel or something like that. What do you think you're gonna do? But they genuinely don't know anything else, like ordering and using violence. And I wish more of the movie was like, see how it doesn't work? But so much of the movie is like, well, it works, so, you know, you better stop being native people and having tradition. You have to listen to the white savior. Otherwise, you know, bad things are just going to happen if you minorities don't start listening to this cishet white man. He knows better. I'm so frustrated by these, yeah. Especially this and the second, but also the first. But especially this one. I thought the idea of the fire was cool. I didn't really feel like they used it that much. For a while, she doesn't even use the flamethrower after getting it. I did think it was cool when she does start using it, and she like takes down the Ikran, I think. That was quite good. Yeah, I think it might have been Mark and the Movies. I'm sorry, I'm still forgetting that name, but that YouTube channel pointed out it's not really that interesting of the ashy area. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, at this point it just feels like, okay, we get it. You really want, when people hear the word Avatar and think four elements, you want them to think of your franchise. Maybe at some point I will watch the animated one. I'm not really opposed to it. I am not promising doing videos necessarily. I don't have that much experience with reviewing that sort of thing, but I've heard a lot of really promising things. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna do very much scene by scene. I think it's just, I mean, so much of it is just so much like the second. Yeah, I really didn't like the little squid things. The action scenes with them were great, but the thing about, like, oh, if you are in this section, if you see those, you are in danger, and then they chase him, and it's just like the part in the second one where they lured him away, and it's like, why are you redoing it? And it doesn't have anywhere near the same impact. Okay. I think, but it was cool. The various action. I mean, pretty much everything action was cool. Let's see. Right. Also okay. I think that might be my final thoughts. I'm just real quick gonna mentally fast forward the entire movie to see if there's anything left that I really want to say. The let's see. I don't know. It also, like, the thing about, okay, so Taruk, well, it's because Taruk Makto becomes one with the Taruk, and it just wants blood, and I don't like what it does to me. Really? Because you seem pretty dead set on fighting. That was also like, his flesh and blood son brings up the broken bow. Wow, that was a bad Enterprise pilot. The Enterprise pilot might actually be worse than this. Possibly. Maybe not, actually. And Jake says, that's useless. Just, what are you doing? What is this? Like, what do you even... Yeah. Neytiri. Apparently, Navi wake up, do the exact same thing when they wake up in a hospital bed as if every American does in movies and TV shows. And I think that might... Yeah, the thing about Spider, the thing, Kiri saving him, and, the symbiont. I appreciate the thing about how the tech billionaire is like, I don't care what it does. Can I make money off it? And he's very frustrated about the AI bubble. Because this movie is set in the future, so by the time it's set, that thing already burst. There's probably several bubbles in between, in fact. In between it bursting and the movies taking place. Let's see. Right. I read that the script for the fourth is going to blow our minds, and I said in my video on the second, well, why isn't that the second or third? And yeah, like, I figure this is probably, like, it's right now certified fresh, and I'm getting to it very early, so I don't know for sure, but I can imagine a lot of audiences are gonna flock to it. So we probably are gonna get at least one more, but yeah, like, the fact that before the second movie came out, he said, oh, by the way, these next two are not going to blow your mind. Why are you making It's very hard for me to think the answer to that question is anything other than profit. But I think, yeah, the idea of Spider can now breathe the air. And I also thought they did, it's somewhat mixed. I mean, one thing is, as soon as the mask is like, oh, we need to change the battery, I was thinking, did you remove the tracking device that was there in the second movie, which was specifically why Spider couldn't just leave them? Because he couldn't take it off, or he wouldn't be able to breathe. Did they somehow disable it? I don't think they mentioned that in either of these movies. But yeah, so for a little while, every so often it beeps, and he does, he comes close to dying, and then or I guess he does temporarily die, and then she, heals him. That I do also appreciate. There's the part where, Kiri is like staying behind, and, Loak is like, no, come with. And I think it's Kiri who says, bring Spider over here. And then Took says, go on, bring Spider over there. And I appreciate, there's some chance. Again, it's unclear if maybe some of this was written by at least one woman, but, it's possible this was written by, as I said, white man. And yeah, appreciate the honesty that as soon as he's biracial, but his father used to be a white man, or white. As soon as he just listens to the women who have intuition and are more in touch with nature and their feelings, things work out. But yeah, the idea that, if they can replicate it, all of humanity is going to go to Pandora, and so that was, so we're bringing back the idea of, what if they colonize, that's, so yeah, appreciate having that in there. And I also, I love science. I think there's so many problems that it can still solve, and it's not even a matter of opinion. It has already solved a lot of problems, right? And my opinion is based on what I hear from people who read these scientific studies and talk about what, is realistic for the future and such. I'm not talking about like, AI could be, no. Certainly not LLMs in the current state. I don't even know if LLMs are salvageable. I think it's a bubble. At some point, it's going to burst. And until then, it's going to use up a lot of resources. I saw someone point out, stop being so selfish and showering. Coca-Cola needs that water to make AI ads. And yeah, I think that so yes. So I love science. I am willing to acknowledge science without ethics is horrifying. And yeah, they don't go quite full District 9 with it, but that movie is R-rated and a hard R at that. They go about as far as they can. Like the part where something is like shoved down his throat. That was also a very impressive shot. I mean, it must have been basically pretty much pure CG. Like normally, what you used to have to do if you wanted to show like something being shoved down someone's throat is film it from like the side. And if you have the camera on one side so you can just see this area, then you'd have the thing being shoved down here because the camera only has one eye, not our two eyes, so it can't judge distance. So forced perspective trick. But seeing it from there, that's a good use of the fact that evidently the technology can now make that kind of thing. Like obviously they're not going to shove a thing down the throat of the actor like that. Right, I guess just briefly on AI, I was also really disappointed when I heard about Cameron. Let's see. So it's the, I hope I'm saying it right, AI 4K upscaling of at least one of his movies. And it's like, when did you stop caring about the art? I thought that was the whole point. Like, you used to clearly care about the art. Just, but the, yeah. Oh, right. No, I'm not going to go into all the details of, you can Google it. Plenty of people have already talked about all the issues with these 4K AI upscaling, let's see. So where does that get us? There's fairly little left. I don't know. It felt a little bit like forced tension when they're arguing over, they keep saying open fire, hold fire. And it also just felt weird. Like, wait, doesn't the general want the right? No, yeah, because she's okay. Yeah, you know what? I think the idea is she's, since she's military, she's having her frail ego threatened. That can be a thing for women as well. It might be more a thing for cishet white men than women, but it can be a thing for women, and it's a big thing in the military. They really do not like. There's actually, my father was in the military when he was young. It was a way to get. He didn't want to go into armed combat, and he didn't. But yeah, very very briefly in the military, and at one point he talked to let's see, the lieutenant, and the lieutenant asked him, in private, like in the lieutenant's office, and you'll see why I keep calling him the lieutenant in a few seconds. He asked him, what do you have in mind for the future? And my father said, what do you mean, sir? At which point the lieutenant slammed his closed fist into the table and shouted, in this office, it is the lieutenant. Is that understood? Like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum. So, yeah, I believe that, a military officer would be that childish. That worked. See, that's the thing. Like, every so often, there's stuff in this movie that works. I'm willing to acknowledge that. I think that might pretty much cover. It was also just kind of disappointing that there was so little new tech. I guess I said that in the review, but yeah. So you got the big truck, you've got the prison, the cage. Is that pretty much it? Like, other than that, you've got little boats, you've got the bigger ship, you've got the flying things, and that's kind of just it. Yeah, I think that might cover. So I've talked about my issues with the Ash tribe. I will acknowledge they are an effective, creepy presence. I just think that should have been done with, cishet white, maybe soldiers or such instead of native peoples. But yeah, the part where it's like, one of them is shouting and one of the others is like, quiet down, and then it's like quiet for a few seconds, and then you see the fires. That was very effective. Let's see. I think that does more or less cover. Let's see. I feel like there's at least one more thing that I definitely wanted to make sure to say. Yeah, Norm and that other scientist, it just feels like, why are they even still here? I guess maybe they're going to have something in movie 4 or 5, but it's just like, is there like a contract thing? Maybe Cameron's worried we're going to forget. I don't think it's working. Like, Yeah. I'm sorry. I think I'm a broken record on this. I'm pretty sure I said it in the second movie, in my video on the second movie. But can we just? Why are we bringing back, you know, as recoms, all these soldiers? Like, I didn't even remember most of them. When we saw them in the second, I remember Wainwright and obviously Quaritch, but I didn't really remember any of the others. Why are we bringing all of them back, but not Michelle Rodriguez? Like, I'm sorry. Did you not think it was bad enough that she was implied to have a bigger role in at least one of the Alita sequels that we're now seemingly not getting? Now she's also not going to be in more. I'm fairly confident I'm not going to start watching Fast and Furious movies. I think I'm gonna find something else that she's in. But it's just, I miss getting to see her in stuff. I think she was significantly more, like, she had an impact on the plot in the first one. And yeah, I remember her. I actually wanted to see her come back. Like, all these others as recoms, but not her. You're bringing back Sigourney Weaver, but not her. I guess at least this one didn't pointlessly kill off. Oh wait, no, never mind. Kate Winslet's character. See, I already forgot because the character is made to be so annoying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A couple of things more. So just real quick. In the first movie, I cared. I think most of us did when Sigourney Weaver's character died. In the second one, I'm sorry, it really didn't hit when Naked Tom died. I mean, he's just kind of there. He doesn't say or do anything of interest. He's bland. He's just his father again. Only there's nothing, like, it feels like he's just there to die. And I know that's not the first time that James Cameron has been accused of having a character who's just there to die, so we'll care. But it really felt like they were like, oh wow, people cared more about Grace, was that her name? The Sigourney Weaver character in the first movie, than we thought. I guess we're going to replicate it. And then in this one, I think it's supposed to be, because like other than her, does any good guy character even die in this movie? I guess the thing about how Pe-Katan did manage to find one member of his tribe, but yeah, they were badly hurt. I appreciate wanting to spread more empathy for aquatic life. I think the second did a substantially better job. And I guess when they talk about, I'm not the first person to point out. I think it might have been Mark in the movies who pointed out, yeah, Spider's in more of the movie. He might be the weakest aspect or just character. I forget exactly, but yeah. I really wish he and Loak would stop saying bro so much. But I guess I did already say that in the review. But yeah, the part where, so they managed to get out of there, and then he's just talking about how he has to take a piss, and good idea, drink before you piss in the water. And they're talking about, like, I don't know, maybe we gotta kill him. Cameron, please, you have to stop. I think we may need to circulate a petition. James Cameron has to stop putting jokes about someone having to take a piss in his movies, because no, it's not working. And I'm not like opposed to gross out comedy. I laughed my ass off at Neighbors 2. Not everything, but there were things in there that were very gross that I really, really laughed hard at. But I did an entire video on that, maybe two, on that movie. So, but yeah, the So he's standing there, and and now Jake, now that he thinks it's his idea, at least eventually he says, "You were right about," And then we have her just kind of like impotently standing there washing her face when she's clearly upset at the, like, rather than immediately trying to stop. And ultimately she's not the one who stops. It is Jake who changes his mind, which I do appreciate. Like, I kind of don't want Jake going around like still wanting to kill Spider, but it again, like, I'm sorry, why is this not at the end of the second movie rather than close to the end of the third? I do not comprehend at all why we're just pausing stuff for such long stretches instead of just having one cohesive story. Like, you realize you could have put, if you took the stuff that the various arc subplots and such, if you took them from the second movie, split half of them and put them in this movie, there would still be room for the little bit of new that actually works in this movie, for that to be in this movie, and there would be breathing room for the other subplots. But instead, we have to have all this extraneous crap. Yeah. I don't want Spider dead because he is, an individual. He is a human. Well, some of the others are aliens. I don't want them dead either, but he is an actual living, thinking being. Same as the Tulkuns. I don't want any of them dead. But the movie doesn't make me care about him specifically, like as a unique individual. Like, and it wouldn't have been that difficult, because the stuff he has with Kiri is good, but then he also has this stuff where he keeps saying "bro," and he's talking about taking a piss, and just like what. Yeah. I kind of don't want more of Recom Quaritch. I have no idea if they're gonna bring back, I mean, hypothetically, maybe he survived because we didn't see his body, we see him fall into fire, but, the Una Chaplin character is able to manipulate fire. Maybe she managed to teach him just enough that he could, or maybe he landed somewhere that's outside of fire, so he just like passed through and it, like, maybe it hurt, but he's okay or something. Right. Okay. I'm sorry. So the second movie, a chunk of that is devoted to Quaritch trying to find where Jake is. And then in this one, they just find him. What are you doing? What is this? What are you thinking? I don't understand. Why would you do it like this? You could literally just have had the second movie be the one where it's found, because it doesn't really change anything that he lures Jake out. There's still a big fight. Like, okay, so by the end of this movie, they know where they live. That's another thing. Like, I mean, the RDA base is still there. Maybe they lost. I don't even know if they lost enough of the military hardware that it's even gonna matter. And how are they even gonna end these? Like, I'm sorry, is the idea that by the end of the fifth movie, somehow Palpatine returned? I mean, there's no way for humans to come back to Pandora. That's the thing. Like, it was a problem at the end of the first movie because we all knew, like, they're just going to come back. What's stopping them from coming back? And you could have had a thing. You could have had a thing. You could have had a thing. All you had to frickin' do is say that there's like some kind of force field around Pandora that Awa has created at the end of the first movie, and that means that humans can't come through. So what do? They can send in recoms. Because what about the second movie Like, you could just rewrite it. What about the second movie needs there to be more than recoms on Pandora? Why do you need all the military hardware? Like, if you badly need a battle, have it be that the recoms take a prisoner, up to like a space base, and there you have a big fight between and Pandora could be like off in the background, distance, horizon kind of thing. Like, it's so. By the end of the second movie, by the end of the third movie, the RDA is just still on Pandora. Are we gonna end the fifth movie with that base being destroyed? And somehow, like, I can imagine by the end of the fifth movie, and that's the thing, like, they just keep not having it destroyed. And, like, we're supposed to not think about how much this is just treading water. By the end of the fifth film, are we supposed to believe that somehow they just can't? I mean, I don't know. Hypothetically, maybe there will by then be like some kind of a force field around Pandora, but then why not introduce that like at the end of the first one or start of the second one or something, other than treading water, other than milking this for all it's worth? And so I'm just going to say it out loud because, like, we all realize it's a ridiculous thing. Hypothetically, I'm exhausted. I think Cameron wrote himself into a corner and he's too stubborn to admit that there's no satisfying conclusion to this. I would love to be shocked by and I'll admit it. If you are watching this after the fifth movie came out, check my video. If I felt that it did it, I'll say it. If I don't mention it at all and you think that it was satisfying, drop a comment and ask if I thought that it was satisfying. But right now, I just don't see how it's even possible. He created this scenario where, like, I don't know how you would, and again, like, it's doable, but I without a significant retcon, I don't know how you would do it at this point. Hypothetically, you could have it be that at the start of the first movie, Earth is already unlivable. There are no humans on it anymore, but there is a spaceship that's going to colonize Pandora, and they're going to send in Jake and the others first to get them to move. And then by the end of that first movie, if you don't want sequels, obviously the ship is destroyed and it's made clear the only people that were on there are like military and ruthless, like, business people who wanted the genocide, so by its destruction, the genocide was prevented. That's if you don't want sequels. If you do want sequels, you could have it be that it's out there in space, but it's too far away from Pandora now that they can send anyone down, and the engines have been destroyed, so it's essentially just floating in space. And then in one of the sequel, in the first sequel, someone builds a thing that enables them to close the distance, so now they can go to Pandora again. But as it is, like, I just do not see it. Appreciate that we did not get a third ridiculous, another unobtainium, I think I've said everything I have to say about unobtainium and the thing they get from the Tulkun in the second movie. I think I said that in my other videos on these movies. I think that might be... I think I may have said already in one of my videos on this franchise, but I do think, in some ways the story of the Wii game is better. I think it's just called Avatar the Game, and I believe it came out in 2009. That's essentially you're playing as a Na'vi, not an avatar falling for the Na'vi. And yeah, you're going around, you're like sabotaging RDA facilities on Pandora and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm starting to repeat stuff I've said, if not in this video, in other videos on this franchise. No, I have not tried the more recent Pandora game. Apparently, for a while there were like issues with performance, so I didn't, I wasn't gonna play it. Apparently, recently a lot of that's been fixed, so I am basically just waiting for a tremendous discount. But yeah, I like the world. I'm just not really that fond of the movies anymore. Yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, once Spider realizes that Jake is about to kill him, I didn't hate all of the dialogue. I think that might cover. Let's see. Yeah, so I appreciate that this one does, in action scenes there are, they have elements, multiple elements in play. I think they did a better job in the first two movies with that. And yeah, I think that might actually, at long last, the video is almost as long as the movie, and probably about as tedious and boring. I don't know. I hope if you found this video really terrible, I hope you dipped out early. I really don't mean to like ruin anyone's day. I just really it's so, yeah, I'm sorry. I just have to say. So I already mentioned how this one, you have these issues with its depiction of ethnic minorities. You realize that earlier this year we got James Gunn's Superman. That movie nails how you go into like conflict with, that movie is so fiercely anti-ICE. Can you believe Kash Patel tried to pass off those shells like, oh look, they wrote anti-ICE. Yeah, that's certainly what people who hate ICE are saying. Anti-ICE. Not F-ICE, not abolish ICE, but anti-ICE. Like, they really don't think very highly of the people they're trying to communicate this to. Yeah. I think Thunderbolts did a better job talking about like how negative emotions can really harm, how we have to process them. And yeah, that was also a movie where several characters were having a similar, I hesitate to say arc, but they were experiencing similar issues, and in that movie, it actually ties them together instead of just having them awkwardly stand next to each other and not really do anything. The suicidal ideation was also like, they didn't spend enough time on it. That's something like you realize you can actually center a movie on that because it's a serious issue. We are actually experiencing people committing suicide, and you're just going to spend that little time on it. It just, I think that might cover the yeah, another thing that I feel like we should have maybe left in the 80s, Jake actually coming out and saying if you just followed orders, Nakatam would still be alive. And then after, he says it, he reiterates it later he does say, "You have proven yourself to me," which was also just a very awkward. Does anybody say it quite like that? And anyway, yeah, like you didn't need him to spell it out. You could have just had him start to say, yeah, if you had just followed orders, or yeah, if he said, this is just like how Nakatam died, if you had just followed orders, and then, you could have had Loak say, you think it's my fault? And then Jake could maybe hesitate for a second and then say, no, of course not. But like, again, I'm sorry, this is like not exactly Dad of the Year material. Am I supposed to hope that he stays with the kid that he said to their face is to blame for his brother dying? Like, what? Again, I think the thing about like, Loak thinks it's his fault. At one point, Jake says maybe it's my fault, which I think might also be why he says to Loak that it's his fault. But yeah, like, I'm sorry, why are we still I'm sorry, in some ways, he is less mature now than he was in the first movie, where he said, I hope this tree hugger crap isn't on the final exam. Like, he's genuinely just, yeah. Let's see. I think that might actually cover right. I thought it was clever. Neytiri sneaking into the RDA facility. The thing about how she puts on the war paint and everything, and she's got the little tracking thing. So when she flies in, and that was established earlier. Oh, if she's got the little blinking thing, that means it's one of Quaritch's, and she lands and she's walking past, and people just see, they think that she's Ash Clan tribe, and the fact that she like hisses at. And one of the guys is like, she wants me. See, that's what I mean. You every so often this movie really does nail this kind of cishet white male mentality, the entitlement. There's so many guys who would react exactly like that. And let's see. I think that might just about cover. Yeah, the couple of times where someone has like an arrow stick through them and is like digging it out worked well. Quaritch calling Spider. I don't really want to repeat the word, but it starts with a B and ends with a D. That also, because he's that much of an a-hole. That's a word he's gonna say to the face of his own son. I wasn't entirely sure. So Quaritch says, your mother loved you. She was impossible to live with, but she loved you. So are they acknowledging that misogyny is a negative trait in men? Because like we also have other misogynist characters that, we have misogynist characters that are supposedly good guys. And the movie itself is somewhat misogynist. So it just feels weird. Yeah. I think that might just about cover. Let's see. Right. Another thing about so the Tulkun have a matriarchy, and that again, they're the ones who say, oh, we can't fight, and it was bad that Payakan fought, even though it was the only way to survive. That also feels, like there are aspects where, a matriarchy would be a good thing. Certainly patriarchy has proven beyond all reasonable doubt that it needs reform or possible nonviolent revolution. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it. I'm trying to give the movie a fair shake, but the fact that because it's specifically the Tulkun that won't fight. The Water Tribe will fight. They just refuse to use guns. But the Tulkun, who are a matriarchy, refuse to fight at all. And that again feels gendered in a way that, like, if the movie was just if it was a movie about how violence does beget more violence, then it would be great that a matriarch is pointing that out. And then they could have a non-violent resolution. But it's an action movie. Like, everyone who went to watch it is expecting violence. So to have it just feels, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and also again, it feels weird to say, these natives, they're scared of modern technology. Well, cishet white, conservative men in America and other countries are scared of trans people, ethnic minorities, healthcare. Like, do you see how it's maybe like, because again, we do need gun control. That's again a huge thing, and I appreciate in some ways it's gotten worse since this movie was written, so maybe they didn't quite have time to change, but gun control has been a problem in America for decades now. And so to make a movie that's all like, these people who won't use guns, they're going to end up dead. Are you serious right now? Like, I get it. James Cameron likes gun violence in movies. In movies. To be clear, I'm not saying he wants it in real life. In movies, if there is a way to work in gun violence, he's probably going to put it in there. And, as long as it's in fiction, I think there is a certain catharsis in it. In real life, I want gun control. And honestly, if it ends up meaning, we just don't have guns in movies anymore, I can live with that. And so can all the people who then won't be shot by guns if we have gun control. But if America has gun control. Yeah, I think that that pretty much covers... I'm really glad that I'm not watching this movie anymore. I guess, there was a while. There were about 2 hours and 55 minutes where I felt like, this is just my life now. Did I have a name before this movie started? Was I always in this cinema? Are these 3D glasses like fused to my face? Okay, that last one's a slight exaggeration. I don't really know. I've never really understood why people say... Is it maybe mostly people who don't already wear glasses? Because, like, I'm sorry. Or, I don't know. There's multiple different 3D glasses. Maybe I'm just lucky. Maybe we have good ones here in Denmark. But it's been a very long time, like decades, I think, since I felt like, okay, these 3D glasses are just impossible. But yeah, it's possible that other places they're genuinely terrible. Anyway, so yeah, when when Jake goes, so yeah, the rescue attempt, Jake goes, and Neytiri is there, and then he starts saying, I don't know whether to thank you for saving us or yell at you for disobeying me. She's saving your life. And the life of your adoptive son. Right, that's another thing. I really thought we left behind... Okay, so it's not technically incest, but I mean, they're raised almost as step siblings. Spider was just always there. Oh, okay. I guess they're doing the thing of, like, they grew up as friends, and then later they fell in love, because technically he wasn't adopted by them. He was just always around. He was playing with, because Neytiri never liked him, was never really a mother to him. And for most of the second and third movie, Spider does not call Jake dad. He calls him sir and the like. So okay, you know what? Fair enough. That one, yeah, that's a merit, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So she saved Jake's life and the life of Spider, who's, crucial to, yeah, preventing humans from colonizing. Again, like occasionally they'll make a good point about colonization and imperialism. And Jake is considering yelling at her because the good thing she did wasn't his idea. See, every so often, this movie is genuinely honest about how ridiculous way too many cishet white men are.